Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a major winter storm and giving you an update on what you should be expecting. Mainly for parts of the interior northeast is where this is going to be impacting, with upwards of 10 inches of snowfall, and some recent model guidance, especially from the North American model, is showing that some of that snowfall might be reaching down further to the coast. So we're going to be covering all of that and more, including my snowfall forecast at the end of today's video, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end so you don't miss that, and so that you get all the information inside of this video. So here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like, and it is actually quite active today. We have fire weather watches in effect for parts of the northern plains, so for parts of Montana, the Dakotas, back through Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois as well. We're dealing with some fire weather watches. Red flag warnings in effect for a little bit of Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska as well, with some freeze warnings in effect in the dark blue region for much of the central, the kind of midsection of the country. So for the Tennessee Valley, the lower Ohio Valley, the mid-Mississippi River Valley, that's what we're dealing with freeze warnings currently in place. We have frost advisories for a couple counties in northern Arkansas, as well as some freeze watches in effect for northern Mississippi, southern Tennessee, and northeastern Arkansas, as well as for also a little bit of northern Oklahoma. We have some wind advisories along the Gulf Coast there for the southeastern United States, as well as for southern California, where they also have some wind advisories currently in place. We have flash flood warnings and flood watches in effect for parts of the southern Appalachians and then down through parts of the southeast, especially for areas like northern Alabama, northern Georgia, southern and eastern Tennessee, western North Carolina, a little bit of Virginia and West Virginia as well. And then for the winter storm part of this, we have some winter weather advisories in the purple and winter storm warnings in the pink up already for a couple counties in Maryland, and I believe a couple counties in West Virginia as well as northern Pennsylvania, and also for southern, central, and northern New York, and a little bit of northern Vermont. And then even for northern Maine, believe it or not, we have some flood watches, even though they're going to be dealing with snowfall, upwards of 4 to 6 inches of snowfall in those areas. But because of melting snow, they're melting away some of that 5-foot snowpack that they have on the ground right now. So they're melting that away, and that's eventually going to cause some flooding, unfortunately. And this is what they consider their mud season during the spring, when all that snow gets melted away and turns all the dirt all into mud. And it's really an unpleasant time of year in that area. The national high temperature yesterday was in Rio Grande Village, Texas, where they got to 101 degrees Fahrenheit. As well as the national low temperature in Peter Sinks, Utah, they got to negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest precipitation or rainfall report was in Stark, Florida, where they got to 2.98 inches of rainfall. And then the high snowfall report was 2 miles west-southwest of Story, Wyoming, where they got 7 inches, as well as Waukene Park, Colorado, where they also got 7 inches of reported snowfall just yesterday. Here's what the RGEM model is showing with this event, which is one of the more high-resolution models that we currently have right now. So you can see the cold Arctic air mass, not necessarily Arctic, but definitely a cold air mass, which is in place over the north-central part of the country. And that's helping the storm provide a little bit of snowfall. So you're going to see as this collides into the storm, which is all that rain on your screen, which you see back through here, as that starts to collide, you're going to end up seeing a little bit of that rain transition to snowfall. So here would be by Thursday or tomorrow early in the morning. Still all rain pretty much. Maybe the westernmost fringe of this storm is getting in on a little bit of snowfall. Then by Thursday or tomorrow, right around 1 or 2 in the morning Eastern time, we're dealing with some of that heavier snowfall, especially over the western part of Pennsylvania and some of the higher elevations especially, and some of the wooded areas that are going to be a little bit colder. That's where we're dealing with a little bit of snowfall that's falling at a rate of close to 1 inch per hour. So very, very heavy snowfall rates. But the thing with this is that it's going to be moving so incredibly quickly, because you have this high pressure that's kicking on its heels and saying that it has to move out of here for this one to actually move in place. So this high pressure is really going to try and kick this storm out as quickly as possible. So that's the one good thing if you don't like snowfall. But the bad thing, of course, is that we're actually still dealing with heavy snowfall falling at heavy and steady rates as well. This would be by Thursday or tomorrow, right around 3, 4, 5 in the morning Eastern time. And notice that areas in western Pennsylvania that just 3 hours ago were dealing with snowfall are now in the lighter snowfall. So you can see how it's going to be mainly a 2 to, I would say, 6 hour burst of snowfall, and then that wraps up the storm. And then you could just go back into maybe some lake effect snow on the back end and just brutally cold conditions for this time of year. You can see all that warm air being pulled up on the eastern end of this, and then wrapping in on the back end. That's what we're dealing with, all your cold air coming in. And also, it's going to be quite windy. We're going to have wind gusts that are going to be closer to 40 miles per hour in a lot of these areas, with a gusty northwest wind if you're on the western side of this storm. If you're on the eastern side of the storm, which only includes a tiny area of eastern New England, then you would be dealing with very warm southeast winds. So really, really dynamic type of system. This would be by tomorrow, right around, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and we're dealing with more of that light to moderate snowfall back through upstate New York, Vermont, and then what the NAM model was picking up on, which we're looking at the RGEM model right now, which is the regional Canadian, but what the North American or the NAM model was picking up on is that this cold air comes in a little bit quicker, and that some of this snowfall on the back end for this area right here some of that rainfall turned over to snow. So we're gonna have to see if that happens. It actually picked up snow for over 12 hours in some of those areas. So if that does happen, you could get maybe a couple inches of snowfall on the back end. It would quickly melt though, and I think it would be mostly a slushy snowfall if that were to be the case. We have very cold air aloft, so you go a couple thousand feet up and you're well below freezing by that point, but it's at the surface where we're just barely above that freezing mark, 34, 35 degrees. So we're just barely above freezing, and that might hinder the snowfall if that were to actually happen. And then here to be by tomorrow, this would be around 12 p.m. So right around noontime, and we're dealing with more of that snowfall back through upstate New York, Vermont, eastern Quebec as well. So getting into areas like Montreal, Quebec City as well. So all of those areas getting into some of that lighter to even heavy at times snowfall. And then you look at the eastern end of this, and you can see why they had the flood watches up, because Maine, for example, is dealing with a lot of rainfall. But you go down into areas like West Virginia and southwestern Virginia, where they were dealing with snowfall, mainly in the higher elevations, but they were dealing with snowfall. Meanwhile, northern Maine, Caribou, Maine, is dealing with rain, just plain rain. So you can see why they have the flood watches. That rain might help melt away some of that snowfall. There has been a lot of discrepancy, especially on this northern end right here, on whether you'll be in the 6-inch area or whether you'll just be in that maybe just coating to an inch, and then you get a little bit of rain as well mixed in there. So there is really a lot of uncertainty, especially on the northern end, but I think we're really starting to fix in on this area right here being within the bullseye of the storm. There's also a lot of uncertainty along the coast on whether you guys will get into a little bit of snowfall, and if so, how much snowfall you'll actually be participating in. Here to be by right around 2, 3 p.m. Eastern time. We're dealing with some of that snow back through much of Vermont, upstate New York. It is below freezing over this entire area by this point, or generally below freezing through this entire area. So it's below that threshold that you would need to have snowfall. So most of the precipitation that you're going to see right now is going to be snowfall by this point later on in the day on Thursday. But again, this is going to be a very fast-moving storm. So you're really going to have to get some heavy snowfall and a burst of snowfall to really get any real decent accumulation. And then moving on, you can see that system does start to head out further to the east. It does transition to snow over parts of northern Maine, northern New Hampshire, but only after most of the bulk of the storm is over. So here's what the European model is showing for the snowfall, and this is one of the more kind of more of a westerly type of setup where you're dealing with the bulk of the snow over here. And I'm going to outline this area. This is what the European model is showing, generally 4 to 10 inches of snowfall, mainly 4 to 8 inches of snowfall, I would say. Here's what the GFS is showing. So you can see overlaid on the same exact map, but with the GFS's snowfall overlaid on it, you can see how the GFS now has that heavier snowfall a little bit further to the east. So it's going to be really borderline for some cities, sort of like Syracuse, going to be right on that line. Buffalo looks like you're going to be too west to get any of that major 4 to 8 inch accumulation. But either way, it looks like there are some big discrepancies still within the models. If you look at what the RGM model is showing, right back to the west, like what the European model is showing. In this case, a city like Erie, Pennsylvania is getting 2 inches, but you look at another city such as Syracuse, and they're back into the 4 to 6 inch area again. So there's really a lot of differences within the models, especially over some of these big cities right along the Great Lakes that could cause some major issues in terms of forecasting over these bigger cities and bigger metropolitan areas. Here's the NAM model, and this is the one that's gonna kind of create a lot more controversy because it is the only outlier model. The NAM 12K model also shows this, so both the North American models do show this, where they have that snowfall getting down to the coast. And believe it or not, the NAM 12K model actually has up to 4 inches in some of these areas, so really heavy snowfall, or for this time of year. It's not really that heavy of snowfall, but for this time of year, it is quite surprising, I guess, to see some of those snowfall amounts popping up. So you can see that covers the entire coastal Northeast for the most part, and it is a lot lighter on the snowfall as you get up through the interior Northeast. You're seeing maybe 2 to 4 inches of snowfall instead of the 4 to 8 inches. And you get into the higher elevations, only then is when you're going to be dealing with 6+ inches if the NAM model is correct. And again, this is the outlier model. It is a possibility. I would give it a 10% chance of actually happening like this, but we really would, it would be more likely that the other models are correct, given the fact that we have maybe 4, 5, 6 models saying one thing, and then you have just one model saying a different thing. So you would, of course, go with the 4, 5, or 6 models that are saying one thing because there's more models, and therefore there's more backing to whatever they're saying. Here's my snowfall forecast from today through Friday. I'm looking at under an inch of snowfall, generally a coating of snowfall all throughout this area, up the spine of the Appalachians, back through the interior Northeast and the Ohio Valley, parts of the Ohio Valley, and then also back through into northern New England. That's where I think you're going to be dealing with under an inch of snowfall, and I am thinking that this snow line will be a little bit further to the south. I don't think it'll stay that far to the north. We've seen most of these storms this year be a little bit colder than what the models have been showing. They've been kind of over amplifying the storm and therefore bringing in a lot more warm air than there actually is. So I think, especially with how cold it is at the upper part of the atmosphere, if you have such high winds, you're gonna have mixing within the atmosphere, meaning that the winds of course are gonna be the winds. Okay, so the winds are very, very high, and that means that some of the colder air is mixing in from the higher parts of the atmosphere, because we're dealing with strong winds coming from the upper parts of the atmosphere mixing to the south. Not only are the winds mixing, so is the cold temperature. So I think you might see a little bit more mixing than what the models are actually showing. And for that reason, I did think it'll be a little bit further to the south, but I'm not totally buying what the NAM is showing, and I'm not going to just yet push that under an inch line all the way to the coast, because I just don't think it's too likely at this point. So that's my under an inch area. Here's my 1 to 3 inch area for southwestern Virginia, southern North Carolina, back up through the Smoky Mountains in West Virginia and Maryland, and then back through central Pennsylvania, along Lake Ontario, or actually Lake Erie. I always mix those two up, and then back through central and eastern New York, Vermont, northern New Hampshire, northern Maine as well. 1 to 3 inches of snowfall over these areas. So this is where you're actually getting into a decent, okay type of accumulation. Here's my 3 to 6 inch area, and you can see that's for parts of the Smoky Mountains in eastern West Virginia, western Maryland, southernmost parts of Pennsylvania, northern Pennsylvania, central New York, and northern New York as well is where I think you're going to get 3 to 6 inches of snowfall, and also for much of Vermont, especially the eastern half of the state, as you get away from the big rivers around Burlington, Vermont, and then you get east of there. That's where I think you're going to get 3 to 6 inches of snowfall. Northern New Hampshire and northern Maine as well. I think 3+ inches is likely. And then here's my 6+ inch area, and I think for the Catskills, and then also for the Adirondacks, the Green and White Mountains, and then through northernmost Maine there, this is where I'm thinking you're probably going to get 6 or more inches of snowfall. And I would say the high end of this scale is going to be probably 9 or 10 inches, and probably some of the higher elevations in the Adirondacks is where it looks most likely that you could maybe get that magic spot that gets 8, 9, 10 inches of snowfall. But for the lower elevations, mainly a 6 to 8 inch event if you live within this pink shaded area. So and that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.